So this happened last summer, 2016, when I was waiting for a friend to come over to my apartment. I didn't have a working cell phone, so I hadn't actually set up my buzzer yet. When people wanted to come over, I had to wait for them to message me so I could go run down to let them into the building. This friend didn't have a cell phone either, though, so we had to do it the old-fashioned way, and we estimated how much time it would take for him to arrive, and I would wait outside and watch for his car. I don't remember the time exactly. I think it was around 4 p.m. that he said he would show up, but it was still really bright outside as it was the middle of summer. Sorry if you were expecting a creepy middle-of-the-night type story. I know. Bummer. I decided I would go outside early just to make sure I was there in case he overestimated how much time it would take for him to show up. I lived in a large apartment building, 10 floors if I recall, with a second matching apartment that mirrored mine across the lot. I lived on a busy street, with a little strip mall just down the road and a Tim Hortons across from that. I'm thankful I lived in such a busy area. Had it have been anywhere more discreet, I might not have this opportunity to share my story. I don't know if I can do a good enough job describing the area, but here's a shitty picture I drew on paint to give you a better idea. By the stop sign, there is a wall with angled ends pointed towards the building, and some bushes, trees between the wall and the road. The road that the Tim Hortons is on is the busy road that I mentioned earlier, and the road my building is on with the stop sign is a small side street that turns into a dirt road, with lots of construction behind the trees at the back of my parking lot. I apologize if none of that made sense, but what you need to take from that is that the side street is quiet, dirt road, unused by regular commuters, and only used by construction vehicles. It was rare to ever see a regular car driving there. There was no need for anyone to ever use that road. So I go outside and stand by the stop sign and light up a smoke while I wait for my buddy, and a couple of drags in, I notice a car coming around the corner behind the trees at the back of the lot. The car drove around the corner at a normal speed, but began to slow down once he got closer to my building. Some red flags went up, but I shrugged it off as nothing and told myself I was being absurd. It was the middle of the day, and the driver probably slowed down because he's looking for an address or something. By the time he was passing me, he was doing under 10 km, roughly 6 miles per hour, and was staring me down. I made eye contact with this guy, and most people when caught staring at someone look down or away embarrassed that they were caught staring, but not this guy. He just looked me dead in the eyes and continued driving past. I was pretty uncomfortable with this, mainly because I was standing so close to the road. So as he drove past, we were able to get a good look at each other. If it weren't for him being inside of a vehicle, he could have reached out and touched me. Now, because he was so close, I was able to get a good look at him, and this also gave me the creeps. His appearance set up even more red flags. If you've ever seen Ederum, he looked a lot like him. Also, he drove what I believe was a 1992 Volvo 960. And it didn't exactly do him any favors either. The car kind of screamed, "I'm going to make a lampshade out of your skin." The reason I think I know the exact car he drove is because he passed by enough times that I have the image of the Volvo symbol and the diagonal line across the grille of the car burned into my mind. After this happened, I spent hours with my partner on Google Images trying to find the car I thought he drove. At first, I thought it was a Buick. But I digress. After he drove past me, he turned right and headed towards the Tim Hortons. Once he passed my building, he was out of sight and I assumed that would be the last of him. A couple minutes later, I hear tires on gravel in the distance and see a vehicle headed my way behind the trees. And who do you think comes rolling around the corner? Him. By now, I'm regretting my decision to come out and wait for my friend early, but I figured he would be showing up any minute now, so there was no point in going inside. So, creepy guy is headed towards me again, and this time, he's driving even slower. When he passes me, I try not to make eye contact, but I can't help it. I feel his eyes on me, and I have to look. When I meet his gaze, he waves slowly like the Queen and speeds off, turning right again. I'm even more creeped out at this point, but I am still trying to play devil's advocate. I assume he's just mistaken me for someone he knows and shrug it off again. I light up another smoke while I'm waiting to try to calm myself down, and here comes Creepo again around the corner. This time, I tell myself that if he doesn't either turn into the parking lot, stop and ask for directions, or turn left when he passes me, that he's either crazy or actually has bad intentions. When he finally passes me, he's slowed down to under 5 km, or 3 miles per hour, and he just smiles at me. His smile sent the biggest chill down my spine in broad daylight, close to a busy road, next to a large apartment building packed full of people. It sent a chill down my spine. The rest of the red flags went up. Alarms started blaring, lights flashing. Everything in my body was screaming at me to get the fuck away from this guy. I moved a bit further away from the road and the stop sign so that if he were to try something, I'd be closer to my building and might have an easier time getting away. I also continued to tell myself that I was crazy and ignore my intuition. I figured he was a senile elderly person who may not be in their right mind, or he was really, really lost and a tad socially retarded. Either way, I told myself there was no way he'd be coming around the corner for a 4th time. I was wrong. He came around the corner 2 or 3 more times after that too, each time staring me down with his overly creepy smile. Not once stopping to speak to me or make an attempt to pull over, always just doing a slow crawl by and staring me down. I waited for him to pass me once more, and when he was out of sight, I ran to the other side of the wall and hid behind the angled part and the trees. The wall was a tall concrete one, and the trees also helped me to hide from the road while I peeked around them to watch for the Volvo. This way, I figured when he came around the corner, he'd see that I was gone from the stop sign and just move on with his day. I had enough time to see him coming and move behind the wall back to the stop sign as he passed so he wouldn't see me in my new hiding place. What really creeps me out the most is that when he was passing by that time, he let his car slow down to the point of it barely moving. You know when you begin to take your foot off the clutch and your car starts rolling? Or how in an automatic, the second you take your foot off the brake, the car will roll forward really slowly? He slowed down to that point, and I watched him from where I hid as he looked around to see where I went. He didn't come back after, which only adds credence to the fact that whatever his reason was for circling my building so many times had something to do with me. I have no idea what his intentions were, but I'm glad it was the middle of the day and I was next to a busy street. So, Edarem number 2, let's not meet.
Sorry if this isn't the content I normally seem to post. I'm this Redditor's girlfriend using his account because I'm more of a lurker than anything on here. I recently relived this memory from whenever I was 4.5 while rewatching some old family tapes of our 8-hour drive up north to Toronto, Canada. I remember a few vivid memories, like seeing Niagara Falls, eating at the Rainforest Cafe, etc., all that jazz. I did not remember being walked out to a man's van and put in a car seat by him before my father almost beat the shit out of him. According to my mom, who told me about this occurrence after fishing through videos with us at some nature park near our hotel, I almost went home with a stranger, or simply put, almost never saw my real family again. According to my own testimony to the park ranger and my father's retelling, a middle-aged man walked up to me while I was looking at fish in a pond and asked if I was ready to go home. I said yes because I had been getting sick from the cold Canadian air. Thanks guys, it's fucking cold up there. And had a fever I needed to sleep off. I took his hand and walked silently to his car, half asleep as he buckled me into a car seat until I heard my dad scream my name. My mom had gotten the park rangers to come, since I was missing, and one of them said she had seen me with someone in the parking lot, since it's impossible to miss a little girl with such a bright pink jacket. My dad was about to beat the man to a pulp outside his car when a ranger and the guy's brother both stopped him. Apparently, the guy had some kind of memory problem and spent some time around the park with his brother and niece, who were still there at the time. He mistook me for his niece and almost took me back with him with his brother's family in Quebec, a far distance from home when you live in St. Louis like I did. My parents got it all sorted out, and everyone seemed relieved as I fell asleep in my mom's arms minutes after the whole fiasco. While I don't remember you firsthand, part guy, I'm glad you didn't take the wrong kid home. Let's not meet again.
I'm a small female living alone in a large city. Knowing exactly what this could mean for me, I'm pretty wary of my surroundings and the people in it. I recently moved to the back of an apartment complex, to the 3rd floor, which I was very excited about, since I hate being on ground level. A few days after moving in, I met my across the way neighbor, Steve. Steve was tall and skinny with dark hair and the tryings of a beard. He was nice, polite in our few passings, but we never had more than an exchange of a few hellos. Until one Saturday night. My friend dropped me off at my place late that night, and I stumbled up the stairs stupid drunk. I knew I was making a ruckus, because Steve opened his door as I approached mine. I waved at him and smiled as I fumbled for my keys. I was facing my door trying to remember which key it was, as they all looked the same, and I felt Steve come up behind me. He grabbed my hand with the keys and said,
"Let me help,"
and immediately found the correct key and helped me put it into the keyhole. It could have been romantic looking back if this guy had not proceeded to stick his nose into my hair and take a deep, shaky breath. The red alarms immediately started going off in my head and cut through my drunken stupor. My breath was frozen in my throat, and I realized just how fucked I could possibly be. "Thanks," I mumbled before slipping through my door and locking it behind me. I stood there for a moment going, what the fuck, when I heard a soft thump on the other side of the door. I slowly turned and looked through the peephole, but I couldn't see anything, only blackness, which did not make any sense because there was a light outside, which kept the staircase lit. I blinked and stepped back before checking again. This time I saw Steve backing away from the peephole. My body felt like it was dunked in ice water. Steve went back into his apartment, and I did not hear anything else that night. For a few weeks after that, I would hear the same soft thump, and find Steve trying to peer into my apartment from the peephole. I could hear his heavy breathing. Sometimes he would even paw at the door, but he never came out. When I came home after that first time, I never called the cops. I probably should have, but Steve was my neighbor, and I did not want to stir up any animosity that I would have to deal with. Steve moved out 2 weeks ago.
Last Monday, the 13th, I had my wisdom teeth removed. Before that, I had a cavity in one of them that caused excruciating pain to radiate in the entire right side of my face. Within this past month, I've been on 2 prescription pain medications. This is the first time I've ever required them. And it turns out that the prescription grade pain medication messes heavily with my anxiety. I've been paranoid all morning. There's been sounds all through my apartment, in the attic, and from empty Oreo packs, etc. It's been just over a month since I moved in with my boyfriend, and my paranoia wasn't terrible until the pain meds. But with him having a set schedule job, and me not having one, I work retail, so the schedule is a week-by-week play. Being home alone in the morning some days since my extraction have been hell, especially when I've been reading these stories. So, I started out today paranoid, trying to do schoolwork, chores, anything I can to distract myself and make time pass. Finally, 3 o'clock hits and I go, fuck it, I can't be in this house any longer right now. I need to go get that baking pan for dinner tonight anyway. So, I get up, I change out of my sweats into some jeans, and I leave. No makeup, hair only brushed. It's nice weather outside and my body is weird with heat, so I sweat a little on my drive. I get to Walmart. Walmart. And I go in, saying hello to a greeter and grabbing a basket, then going to the home goods. I'm on the hunt for a baking pan, but I pause in an aisle that has cutting boards because I'm unsure if my boyfriend had one. He moved down here from another state some months ago, but didn't do much hardcore cooking, so I started looking at those. Out of the corner of my eye, I see someone with a cart coming into the aisle. Due to how I was raised, and also just wanting to be polite, I look up and start moving closer to the shelves. I live in a more southern state in the US. We're all kind of polite here, or fake being polite. It's an older man. To me, an 18-year-old female. He looks to be in his 40s or 50s, and he's looking right at me. "Excuse me, has anyone told you that you're beautiful today?" His tone seems sincere enough, but it throws me off. "My boyfriend has," I respond, almost a reflex. I don't want to get into a conversation with this dude. A brief flash of disappointment crosses his face, and he breaks eye contact with me, instead, looking in the direction his cart is facing. "Well, now you've been told twice," he says, starting to move along. "I have," I respond, as chipper as ever. "Thank you." He moves on down the aisle, and I take one last glance at the cutting boards before I decide to move on to find the baking pan. To my luck, they're in the next aisle. I needed a specific size, so I go on the hunt for it, looking intently, picking up different pans, comparing prices. Then I see a cart coming from right down the aisle. I look up, a bit stunned, to see it's the same older man. I try not to think anything of it, making eye contact again and giving a half-hearted smile before looking back at the pans. He browses, then seems to pause almost right behind me. I'm intensely uncomfortable, so I grab a pan that seems like it would fit my needs, then leave the aisle. Something in me, a mix of my desire for a cutting board and the curious part of me wondering if I was being rational in my thinking of this guy being a creeper, decided to stop again in the cutting board aisle, the one where the dude told me I was beautiful. Lo and behold, as I'm looking again at the cutting boards, from the aisle mouth closest to me, the dude comes down. I look at him again, then go back to looking at the cutting boards. He walks down the aisle. I choose a cutting board, decide to have a glance at the knives above them, and see from the corner of my eye this guy turning his cart around and coming back towards me. I look more intensely at the knives now. I pick them up, look them over, wanting him to just see what I'm looking at, because I can feel his eyes on me. He's moving slowly. His cart gets right behind where I am and pauses. I can feel him either looking at the knives over my shoulder or just looking at me. I can't stand it. I put a knife quickly in my basket and I dart off, not looking back. I ended up going to the self-scan at the other end of the store than I was parked and took the long way out to my car, just in case. I'm still not sure if I'm just being paranoid or if I had a reason to be freaked out, but seriously, older man from Walmart, let's never meet again.
Was going to NoSleep this until I realized that was a fictional sub. This is an actual experience that makes me peep out of my kitchen blinds every morning before turning on the light. Cut to the encounter. It's dawn, so still a little dark even though all of the blinds are open in the kitchen. I flip on the light and start feeding the cats as usual. Through the glare on the window, I think I see someone in my backyard, which wouldn't be unheard of as the older lady rents the guest house behind me. She has her own fenced area though. I get closer and lose my breath as a scraggly middle-aged stranger is in a robe in my backyard, staring at me. He's standing perfectly still and doesn't look away, which immediately struck me with a, oh shit, I'm in a horror movie feeling. I stared back for a bit and realized he was looking at the house, not me. I rationalized thinking maybe he's the older lady's overnight guest and got confused about her living arrangement. Maybe he thinks I'm an intruder? So I step out back and give him a, "Good morning, how you doing?" as I walk up and try to determine his eye line. He answers back normally, as if nothing about his situation is weird. Note, he has not made eye contact. He is still staring at the house. I then voice the classic passive-aggressive suburbia threat. "Can I help you?"
"I'm your neighbor. I think my kid's toy is on your roof."
Two things. I know my neighbors. He was not familiar. Also, what kid lands a toy on the roof at this hour? I tell him I'll go up and check after work, kind of shooing him out. He doesn't move, just keeps staring. I repeat, "I'll check after work. You can go. Which house are you? I'll leave it at your door. What is it?" He's silent for a moment as I grow more irritated at his lack of response, and more creeped out. Finally he replies,
"Oh, I'm just a couple houses that way."
He lackadaisically points in no discernible direction. I say okay and again ask what his kid lost. He speaks again.
"Really, I could get it if I could come in and go out that window."
He points up at an attic vent. "No, that's not really a window. I promise I'll check later. Have a good day." Again, trying to politely shoo him. I've now edged myself over to a loose board from my firewood pile that I could use as a weapon. He continues to stare at the house. His eyes haven't moved yet. I pick up the board and pretend I'm moving it to a table behind him, so I can put him between myself and the fence gate, his hopeful exit. As I'm doing that, he breaks the trance and walks towards my back door. I'm pretty much done with niceties at this point. I run up to block him, board in hand, and deliver the weakest intimidation speech ever. "Look, man, I don't know who you are, but I'm sorry. Maybe I don't remember you. It's early, but I can't let you in my house. Please, I'll look on the roof later." He raises up his hand as if to say, No, I don't mean any harm, and tries to put it on my shoulder. I sidestep and put a few feet between us. He speaks again, in a dazed tone.
"I'm sorry. Maybe if I could just use your ladder, I can get up there."
I get a little more confrontational and raise the board to show it, not cocked, but visible. "Dude, I said I'd look later. Please leave. I have to get ready for work." He turns, saunters, and looks at the house again, now back to his original spot, in a trance again. "Please leave!" My yell rolls off him. He isn't even listening, but after a yawn, he does casually make his way back down the side of the house. At this point, I dart back inside and watch him from the windows, cell phone at the ready. He leaves and shuts the gate behind him effortlessly, which, by the way, is hard to do. My friends still haven't mastered the lift and pull gate locking move. I asked around, and no one knew who this guy was based on my description, and no one has seen him since. I would say he was mentally ill, maybe homeless and passing through, but he seemed too clean-cut, scraggly but not dirty. I still don't know what to make of it. It was just so bizarre how he paid so little mind to trespassing and being told to leave. And no, there was no toy on my roof, or in my yard.
First time poster here. Back in 2012, when I moved 1,200 miles away from my home state, I didn't know anyone in the area. Despite being a rather introverted 22-year-old, I thought it would be good for me to get to know some locals. After joining meetup.com, I browsed several groups until I found one that looked perfect. It was a nearly holistic healing center where they held events ranging from Tibetan singing bowls to psychic fairs. Given my lifelong interest in things of the alternative nature, I was excited by the thought of making some new like-minded friends. I signed up for the next event and attended a few days later. Upon my arrival, I was enchanted by the scent of incense and abundant good vibes. The owner was warm and kind as she introduced herself and the other attendees. Everyone I met was genuine, inclusive, and made me feel very welcome. I am someone who is incredibly close with my family, and it was my first time living alone and far from home. For these reasons, it was wonderful to feel such an instant connection with others. I had a great time getting to know everyone, and before I left, the owner, Rebecca, invited me to come back. That turned into me frequenting the center 4 to 5 times a week. Early on, I met a guy named Ronnie at a Reiki circle. Reiki is a Japanese relaxation technique. He was a middle-aged man who was at the early stages of balding and kept his long hair in a ponytail. His skin was tan, and he was in good shape with muscular arms. Compared to my petite frame, he towered over me at about 6 feet tall. Following the Reiki, everyone would always hug one another and chat. Rodney was the first to come over and give me a very long, tight embrace. As we spoke, he told me how he was a single father and introduced me to his teenage son. The three of us hit it off immediately. Rodney and I seemed to have a lot in common, from our love of raw vegan food to scuba diving. It felt like I had met a kindred spirit, and the energy he exuded was calm and peaceful. He was easy to trust and open up to. Over the coming months, I became Reiki certified and was spending a lot of time at the center. There was a core group of us that became inseparable. Rodney was part of the gang. We would hold full moon ceremonies at the beach, drum circles at night, and healing sessions by day. Once a week in the evenings, we would go to Panera to get some tea and enjoy each other's company. All in all, it was a very fun time in my life. As time went on, I would see Rodney often. We would meet at farmers markets. I volunteered to help him run a haunted house attraction he was managing and attended his yoga classes while he was getting his instructor education completed. Rodney and I developed a deep friendship, but nothing more than that. After all, I didn't have those feelings for him. I never got the impression that he did either, and I was close with his girlfriend, who he seemed to be very much in love with. If anything, I would say he was more of a fatherly figure to me. For all of these reasons, I let my guard down. Years later, the lease on my apartment was ending, and I decided to move in with my boyfriend, who lived about 40 minutes away. The distance, combined with a busy new job, left me with less and less time to visit the center. Eventually, I stopped going, other than the occasional trip to their little gift shop to buy sage and crystals. Rodney and I kept in touch a bit through Facebook, mostly him liking or commenting on my photos. Life happened, and it had been about 2 years since we had last seen each other in person. One day, I was on my lunch break at work and went to a nearby grocery store to get some summer rolls. As I walked by the coffee bar, I saw Rodney, and his eyes lit up while he opened his arms wide. I was given one of his infamously long hugs while he slowly rocked back and forth. He told me I looked great, and we caught up on what we'd both been up to since we saw each other last. I explained how I had started another job not far from the center, so I'd be in the area again. He told me that he and his girlfriend, our mutual friend, had broken up. Apparently, she was incredibly needy and insecure, which seemed untrue, as I knew her pretty well. Then he started to tell me about his new business plans to teach rich older women yoga after they are lonely and neglected by their husbands, so they want to be touched. Taken aback by his intentions, I continued to listen as he went on.
I have a private studio space now. You should come by sometime. We could lay naked in the sun and do some stretches. It would be very healing.
I was beginning to feel uncomfortable. Then again, I thought perhaps I was overreacting. After all, this guy was a total hippie, so it probably didn't seem strange to him. Myself, being flustered and unsure of what to say, said,
Cool.
Pulls out phone.
Oh, hey, I'm running really late for work. I need to get going. It was nice seeing you.
He leans in again to give an awkwardly long hug and then kissed me. On the lips. Something he had never done before. A few weeks passed by, and Rodney had sent me some texts and Facebook messages about getting together. I lied and said I couldn't because I was very busy with my job. Although I felt creeped out about the whole situation, I tried to rationalize with myself that I was being overly dramatic. After all, I had known the guy and his son for years, and he had never done anything to betray my trust. Despite avoiding that grocery store since we had last bumped into each other, I had to go back a couple weeks later to get a specialty item. Since it was a different day of the week, I was certain I wouldn't see him there. Wrong. Avoiding the coffee bar area, I made my way through the back aisles. Suddenly, I felt a hand on my shoulder, followed by Rodney saying my name from behind me. Despite being unable to shake the anxiety I was feeling, I slowly turned around with a forced smile and said hello. Once again, there was another long-ass hug. He then told me he wanted to hire me for a project he was working on, knowing that I was having a bit of a tough time financially.
I have a vision for the space I'm working on. I'll do yoga poses naked and have them shot in black and white. I'll hang the pictures in the studio. I want you to be the photographer.
He knew fully well that I used to be a photographer. I paused for a moment, and I told him I wasn't sure I would be able to do it.
Most of my equipment is still up north, and I don't have the lenses I would need.
Another lie, but I really thought we were friends and didn't want to jeopardize that with some weird Leo, Kate, Titanic-ish photo shoot. Then he tells me that he's sure whatever lens I have will be just fine, and that I should stop by the studio tomorrow after I'm off work. He gives me the address, and I tell him I really wouldn't be able to stay long as I need to get home and let my dogs out. Still, he insists I should check the place out, that he wants to give me a tour, and he cannot wait to show me. The next day, I drove by the location on my way home, contemplating on whether or not I should go in. My brain kept telling me that it was fine. I knew him very well. I knew his son. He was a harmless hippie. But then why couldn't I shake the uneasy feeling in the pit of my stomach? So I decided to turn around and went straight to my house. Once I was home, he called me 9 times that same night, but I didn't answer. In the messages, it sounded like he was really angry, but was trying his hardest to come across as calm. The following day, he called me 14 times, mostly just calling and hanging up repeatedly. After about a week, the call stopped completely, and I put the whole situation in the back of my mind. Fast forward to a few months later, I'm at the center chatting with my friend Rebecca, who owns the place. We were chatting up for a while when I asked her if she has seen Rodney lately. Her eyes became stern, yet panicked.
He's not allowed to come here anymore. You need to stay away from him,
she warned. Curious to know more, I mentioned how the last time I seen him, he was acting rather strange. I proceeded to tell her about the photo shoot he wanted to do at his new spot downtown. Again, she looked deeply concerned and let out a long sigh. What she told me still shakes me to the core. Apparently, right around the time he wanted to do our photo shoot, he had gotten arrested for beating the shit out of his new girlfriend. So bad that Rebecca teared up as she described the injuries that put her in the hospital. Not long after that, he was arrested a second time for sexually assaulting another woman as well as other drug-related charges. She continued on to inform me that he never had any intention of opening a studio. He was totally broke and couldn't afford the lease, but he did know the guy who owned the building. Rodney had a key to look after the place while the owner was out of town. Rebecca knew all of this because she was good friends with Rodney's ex-girlfriend, who told her everything while she was in the hospital. My mouth dropped and my heart sank when I heard all of this. The person that I had known for years had attacked women and purposely fabricated a story to get me alone with him. One of the scariest parts to me is that I'm usually such a good judge of character, and he had me completely fooled for a long time. It really made me question my instincts and gave me a lot of trust issues. At least in the end, I didn't listen to my gut feeling. Not to be dramatic, but it could have saved my life. It's terrifying to think of what his intentions were for me that night. In retrospect, I can see other situations that would have been red flags. I guess hindsight really is 20/20. Looking back, there were things that I overlooked which all make perfect sense now. Maybe for some, the outcome seems obvious, but at the time, I really thought he was a great person. Perhaps my younger self was naive and too trusting. All things considered, I can certainly say that I am much more cautious now. I'm sharing this story in hopes that even just one person will learn something from my cautionary tale. And Rodney, please, let's never meet again.
I'm from the Netherlands and live with my boyfriend. This happened to us a year or two back, when we had just started living in this small apartment. Now, this guy had always been a bit odd, but I had lived in bad neighborhoods, and he hadn't done more than make noise before. It's the middle of the night, and we're all asleep when my dog starts barking, waking me up. I vaguely hear some sort of scratching sound in the living room, and I decide to wake up my boyfriend. He goes to check it out, and it's our upstairs neighbor, trying to pry open the tiny window in the kitchen area. He starts talking about how we threw garbage on his balcony. He lives above us, so that would be a feat. My boyfriend sends him away, seeing he was obviously on something. A few hours later, I wake up to walk the dog and see a fire truck outside our flat. Someone had set an apartment in the next flat over on fire. Luckily, the occupants weren't home and a resident of our flat had alerted everyone. Surprise, surprise, it's creepy upstairs neighbor. We instantly knew it was him, and apparently, he'd set our underground dumpster on fire the year before, so he was locked up almost immediately. Now we tend to sleep through a lot, so we're lucky our little pup started barking, or we probably would have died. Creepy upstairs neighbor, let's not meet. One day when I was younger, my mom and I visited my aunt's apartment. It's a giant looking house with a side driveway that leads around the back to a small parking lot for tenants, with the house entrances being off to the side, facing away and hidden from the busy street. I don't remember how old I and my cousin, my aunt's daughter, were, but to the best of my memory, we were both somewhere around the ages of 8 to 12, with her being slightly older than I. It was still midday, and we were all hungry. So my mom and my aunt decided to go shopping, and were then going to pick up pizza on the way back for us all to eat. Me and my cousin were ecstatic, as we loved pizza. Our parents left, and me and my cousin stay and watch TV with the volume really low while browsing on her laptop. It's probably about 25 minutes after our parents left when we start seeing the front door lock shaking. We thought our parents were back home, but then we noticed something suspicious. Instead of the locks of the door quickly turning as if our parents got back, we instead saw that the locks were very slowly turning to unlock. We suddenly both realized it wasn't our parents, and definitely an intruder. We both stared at the front door silently, freaked out and frozen. I always thought those horror movies where the actors stand frozen in fear like idiots were fake, but it was this moment that proved that idea was wrong. As we both stood there frozen in horror, we both saw the top lock finally turn all the way after what felt like half a minute. Then we start to see the bottom lock slowly start to turn. The door was probably half a second from being unlocked completely, when suddenly, my cousin breaks free from being frozen in fear and sprints to the door and turns both of the locks to prevent the door from being opened. We dared not look out the second-story window to see who was trying to get in. We were horrified and stayed quiet, waiting in the living room. We didn't say a word to each other and just sat there on the couch. It was about 15 minutes until our parents got home, where we told them the whole ordeal and they were shocked. We don't know what would have happened if my cousin didn't sprint to lock the door, but to this day, I can remember very vividly seeing the door lock shaking rapidly and slowly turning. It was definitely very scary. I grew up in a small city, so when I moved into the mountains in Colorado, I took the opportunity to go on a fair amount of walks out in the woods all around my house. For the most part, I would only walk the woods behind our house, since we had a very large property. One day, feeling bored of the woods behind our house, I asked my parents, and they told me I could walk the woods across the street. I excitedly rushed out to go walking across the street. As soon as I got to the edge of the woods, though, I was already a bit unnerved. On the ground, I saw the shell of a bullet. I felt especially frightened because I have a fairly irrational fear of guns, but I decided to get over my fear and continue on because the case was obviously old, covered in dirt and such, and we lived by a big hunting town, so it was to be expected. The next weird thing I came across was a pile of deer hair. I, obviously not knowing much about hunting, saw it and thought that a doe must have laid there when she was having her babies. At that moment, I was excited, not realizing that the hair was most likely the result of a deer being shot in that spot. The final, weirdest, and worst thing I found was at a clearing in the woods. A clearing I didn't realize was on a person's property at the time. As soon as I got out of the clearing, I saw a large block of styrofoam with 2 iron rods stuck through it to keep it standing in place. It was full of bullet holes. Looking around, I noticed deer bones scattered around, and the bones of some other animals, including a full set of some small animals' bones laying on a rock beside the styrofoam. Confused and not quite sure what I had found, I decided to go and get my parents. When I got them to come, I first showed them the pile of hair, and they pointed out to me how it was probably where a deer had been shot. Then, I led them to the styrofoam, and the first thing they pointed out was that they were right in someone's front yard. Mind you, it was a giant front yard, and the house was small, off in the distance. After looking at the dead animals, we noticed two things. Not only did one of the animals have a chain around it, chaining it to one of the poles that the styrofoam was on, but some of the animals I couldn't recognize at first were obviously domestic cats and dogs. At the end of the day, all we could do was walk home. It sounds terrible, but the animals were obviously dead for a long time, and we believe they were killed by the crazy former owner of the property we were on. The owner was long gone, and the police force in our own town was so small and poorly trained that they probably would have simply gotten mad at us for being on someone's property, and not really care about what we found. I'm sad that we couldn't do more, but I genuinely believe no justice would have come of calling the police.